Sky's the Limit, and I'm your host, Sharmeen Ali. Every week we bring to you an exclusive personality, somebody very special from Pakistan or even abroad. But this week we have a very special guest with us who happens to be one of the newest members of the House of Lords in the United Kingdom, and he's also one of the youngest in history to become a Lord this year by Her Majesty the Queen. I'm very proud today to introduce Lord Aamer Sarfraz, who's with us, and I'd also like to add just on the side that he also happens to be my younger brother. Lord Aamer Sarfraz, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time. We know you're so busy. This is your first trip back in Pakistan since you've become a member of the House of Lords, and you've given PTV this time. Thank you so much for being on our program.
Look at the things I have to do to get on your show. I had to go and get appointed to the House of Lords to make it here with you.
No, absolutely. I would have loved to have you earlier because you've got a lot of achievements under your belt. But this by far, this is something huge. And when you talk to people about it here in Pakistan, it's something that's rare. It's something that people can't believe. They can't get their head around that. How did this even happen? So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about your journey. But first, what our viewers would like to know is, where did Aamer Sarfraz start to dream big, and your childhood, your life, which I know about but our viewers don't. Tell us about your childhood and how you grew up and how that impacted your future thinking and who you are right now.
Well, I grew up in Islamabad, and probably couldn't think of a better place to grow up. And one of the main things about growing up here in Pakistan was I was very aware of of people and their issues, and particularly poorer people, and I always just wanted to serve poor people who need help, and so it shaped me tremendously growing up in Pakistan. I wouldn't have wanted to grow up anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you grew up right here in Islamabad. So tell us about the school, your school life over here, what you experienced. What was that like? Well,
I went to the city school, and before that I went to the American school. And some of my closest and oldest friends are still here in Islamabad. And school was great here. It was a small town at that time. Now it's a big, sprawled city, but at that time it was a small town. You could walk around and everyone knew everyone. It was a lovely place to grow up. You could go on the weekends to the mountains. We'd go to Dunga Gully all the time, every weekend, every other weekend. And so I'm very lucky to have grown up in Islamabad.
And you were also a very keen sportsman. You were a golfer. And you were also on the Optimus sailing team. Tell us about that experience a little bit. Because at a very young age, you were achieving these trophies and tournaments and first prizes, gold medals.
Well, I love playing golf, and I love sailing. But now I'm a tennis star. You should see my tennis.
Right.
It's one of the things about growing up in Islamabad is you can have all of these experiences. We would sail on Rawal Dam, and it was a wonderful time. I also actually represented Pakistan on the under-16 sailing team in various competitions internationally.
Right, exactly. And however, you were not born in Pakistan, you were born in London, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your association and your sort of connection to Great Britain. You grew up in Pakistan, but you were always also British at heart. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I was born in London. I didn't grow up there. But in 2002, I moved to London, and I did my master's there. I had my first job there, and it became home. I met my wife there, and my kids are now growing up there. And London is very much home, but Islamabad is where the heart always is.
Right, and after finishing your ONA levels here in Islamabad, then you ended up in Boston University, and you were like every other college kid over there. Tell us about how you felt about Boston University being a student there. You loved it, didn't you?
No, it was great. It was a university town. You had all these universities, and there was a lot of people from Pakistan, the Middle East there, and it was a great experience. And I'm still very connected to Boston. I sit on the advisory board of the Party School, which is one of the colleges of Boston University. So I keep a relationship there. But it's a great place to go to school because there's so many universities and international students, and so I loved it.
Right, and you were a sort of an inventor back in college days.
That's right, yeah.
You got a patent
Yeah.
on a technology that you created. Tell us about that a little bit as well.
You know, well, I was 16 or 17 years old, and myself and a friend of mine in university, we wrote the code for a digital receipt system way before there was any concept of that. You could go shopping and you get your receipts digitally, and that patent actually was sold. And for years and years after that, we got a check in the mail for selling that patent, and I was very proud of that. We worked very, very hard at that.
Right, that was one of your first sort of ventures into
That's
being an inventor, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And then having a patent and then selling it. Now, coming back to Pakistan, living in Pakistan,
Yeah.
what did you experience here and observe as a child that you feel has had an indelible impact on who you are today, on you psychologically, emotionally, and everything, and your goals and dreams?
There's a number of things. Some of the principles of growing up here, the values that you have of respect and regard for elders, these are things that have stuck with me throughout. So I sit in the House of Lords where the average age is 70. And I'm able to learn a lot from my colleagues and have a lot of regard from them. And that sort of, those values and principles I learned in Pakistan. But also the lasting impact of being in Pakistan was seeing the poor people and their needs in rural parts of the country. And so I've really been committed to trying to help folks anywhere I can in the world because of the time I spent in Pakistan. And when we were growing up, there was a lot of Afghan refugees in Islamabad as well, everywhere. And I've picked up this cause in Parliament on the Rohingyas, which is a refugee community now in Bangladesh. And I think it's because witnessing how the Afghan refugees were in Pakistan, I really felt for the Rohingyas and the support they needed.
Yeah, that's absolutely a very touching issue, and we'll get into that a little bit further along in our discussion. But now I'd also like to ask you, tell us about your family. Did you feel close to them growing up? And what about your parents? What did they wish for your future? Did your dad want you to join the family business? Did you end up doing something different? Tell us about your family.
Well, I have 3 lovely elder sisters who I'm very, very close to them and their children. Very, very fortunate to have them in my life. 3 strong sisters. So that was a great impact because I have 2 younger daughters now, and I've been surrounded by strong women all my life. And my parents, you see, I think my father always let me do what I wanted to do. And so he never said, listen, I want you to be a doctor or an engineer or anything. Whenever I came to him and said, listen, I'd like to try and do something in technology or in anything, I had any idea, he'd say, go for it. And I think that was hugely helpful to me. My mother was hugely supportive in everything I did. But when I decided that I wanted to go into public service, into politics, she was the one when I was 18 years old who said to me, do your politics in the UK and make a difference to people all over the world. And she said to me back then that I want you to be in the House of Lords. And I said, what are you talking about? But there you have it. So what they say about maa ki dua is absolutely correct.
Absolutely. And in your maiden speech in the House of Lords, you mentioned about your family being a family that's been in service, that's been in the military. How has that impacted you?
Well, I wish I had also joined the military. I couldn't because I have asthma. But all of our elders have had military service, and our father, of course, went to the Britannia Royal Naval Academy, and both grandfathers fought in World War II in the British Indian Army, and so I have a lot of regard for the military and for veterans and care deeply about it. And I think the military concepts of discipline and being on time and hard work and integrity, I value those tremendously because of the family background.
So, Lord Aamer, what exactly did you want to become when you grew up? I mean, I'm sure as a child or a teenager, you didn't think in your mind, I want to be a member of the House of Lords. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be in public service of some sort. I wanted to be able to help as many people as I could. And doing charity and other things and being involved with not-for-profits is one way, and something I've been doing for a long time. But to have an impact on lots of people through legislation and parliamentary duties, I thought would be the most impactful way to care for people and help others. And so I always just wanted to serve. That's all I wanted to do, was to be of service to people.
Right. Okay, so what about people who you looked up to? Who were your role models? Was there anybody who you had in mind who you thought that in history, or a contemporary or a senior, who you thought that, I would love to be like this person, somebody who really inspired you?
Well, domestically, there were people here in Pakistan who were hugely involved in welfare and charity, like Eidi Sahab, late Eidi, and others who I was hugely inspired by. And internationally, there were business folks who had made tremendous amounts of wealth, billions of dollars, and then given it all away to their foundations and charity. And those are the ones who I really, really admired. So I give you an example. In the rice industry in Pakistan, we eat IRI rice. This is rice which is from the International Rice Research Institute, IRI rice. And this institute is funded partly by the Gates Foundation. And so you have someone in California or in the West Coast who's funding this institute in the Philippines, which is feeding Pakistan this variety of rice. And he has no connection to Pakistan. And neither does the Ford Foundation, neither does Buffett's charity work. And these are individuals who are helping people all over the world. And I was hugely inspired by that selflessness. And I've read and studied a lot about the concept of charity and foundations and endowment, which is fundamentally an Islamic concept. The concept of a waqf is an Islamic concept. And there's books written about it. And so I think there's a lot one can learn from the Islamic concept of waqfs.
Absolutely, and we also hear the Prime Minister speak all the time about Riyasat-e-Medina and how it was a welfare state and looked after its poor and vulnerable. I also now want to ask you that growing up, was there any one incident or incidents that impacted your future goals and you decided that I want to take this direction? Like any one defining moment?
There wasn't a single defining moment, but there was lots of little moments. And it was all the time just being aware of people's problems and people's desires, people wanting to buy houses, send their kids to school, dealing with medical illnesses. That's what I was aware of. I'm not into watching sports or cricket or football or any of that. I just really, really interested in what people need to improve their lives, and that's my interest.
Right. So first I'm going to talk about your humanitarian interests before we get into your business and your career, etc., because I know that's very close to your heart. You're also a very spiritual person. You have a huge amount of respect, like we all do, for the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. You've sent out books to family members which you had published with all his different sayings and all of that, and you do see him as a role model like we all would like to. So as far as your humanitarian work is concerned, now you got into agriculture in Pakistan and you started looking into the well-being of those farmers and the women and the children. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, smallholder farmers in Pakistan need support. They need training and they need advisory support and they need long-term, so not sort of one-off. They have a season, but they need it the next season, the season after. They need access to money, they need access to good quality inputs. And I thought that we'd work with smallholders to help them. And we've been doing that for a number of years, but also women in farming communities. So for the first time, we set up these daycare centers where women could leave their children with us and we look after them, give them classes and let them play sports when the mothers did their work in the daytime. So these kids were being taken in the field, not for child labor, but because the mums had nowhere to leave them. So we set up these units. I think we're the only folks who did training for COVID for women farm workers this year. I'm very proud of that. And there's a lot we do in agriculture. It's something which I care deeply about. But it's one of the areas that I like to focus on is agriculture.
And okay, aside from agriculture, you've also been very involved with special needs children.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because you brought a very unusual program to Pakistan which has not been seen before, which is beneficial for children with, say, autism and Down syndrome. Tell us a bit about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And so today I was with the President of Pakistan, and all we talked about was special needs children. It's wonderful to see his commitment towards special needs children. I think, that sort of commitment, I've never seen it before. And coming from a head of state is a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is.
And so what I tried to do was, for special needs kids, set up a equine therapy program, so they could ride horses. I mean, there's something about sitting on a horse. When you or I sit on a horse, you sit straight, and it's an experience. And for kids with special needs, it's a therapy. And so we got trainers to come in from the UK and from the US and train our domestic trainers, and now we have 60 kids in Islamabad,
Right.
who and it's all free of cost for them, and they come and they ride these horses. The horses are named after Game of Thrones characters, as Arya and Winter and Khaleesi, and they love it. And I tell you something, it gives me more satisfaction seeing these mums who come and leave their kids at the center, and the expression on their face changes when their kid gets on a horse. These are kids with emotional, cognitive special needs, and some with physical special needs. It gives me more satisfaction doing this than any other work in the world.
The amount of benefit that it has for the child itself, the child who's getting this therapy, I mean, it's huge. From what we hear from the people who are actually on the field there, the impact it has on the child's life, it just has a sudden calming effect, which parents with the children with those kind of challenges really crave for, and they, alhamdulillah, they get that, and the child also gets that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this January we launched the Lord Sarfraz Foundation to bring together all of our various sort of charitable activities. I never really wanted to do these things openly. It's always very private, the work you do with communities. But now I thought it's better to institutionalize it, to make it a long-term project. And so one of the other things we're doing is working with prisons in Pakistan, because there are a lot of babies in jail, not just in Pakistan, but all over the world, who are there with their mums, babies and toddlers. And we've created this baby box, which we give them every month, which has all their supplies in it, and same for toddlers. And I'd like every prison in Pakistan, every child in prison with a mum, to receive one of these baby boxes every month.
Okay, that's wonderful. All of this work, supplying the baby boxes, the equine therapy for the differently abled special needs children, this is all free of cost for those people, and it's funded by yourself entirely, right?
That's right, yeah.
Right. So fabulous. That's excellent work, and we're very proud of what you're doing, and you're doing this for Pakistan, and you're doing it for the people who need it the most in Pakistan. It's so important. Now going on to your actual work and your career. We talked about how you went to Boston University, then you went to the London School of Economics. Following the London School of Economics, you started to have an interest in private equity, which is another journey on its own. So tell us about how you got into this field, because this field is notoriously difficult to get into. And you somehow managed to get into those very difficult careers, etc. Somehow you have this gift for that. So please tell us how you did that.
Well, after I finished my master's, I applied for hundreds of jobs of any type that I could get, and I could barely get an interview, let alone a job anywhere. And it was a painful process of months and months, and lots of young folks go through it every year. I kept doing it, kept applying, and finally I got a break. I met an individual who I remain very close to till today, and he gave me my first sort of job in venture capital, and then I joined a larger private equity firm. But I was very lucky to meet people in my career who have had a huge impact on me professionally, because these are people who think really big and about changing the world. And so one individual I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years is a gentleman called Tim Draper, who's a venture capitalist in the US. And just the scale of vision and thought has been hugely inspirational for me. I mean, he's all about changing every industry for the better of the consumer and for the better of users. And so another individual was a gentleman called Tom Kaplan, who had a huge impact on me. An entrepreneur, investor, who really taught me about sort of morals in business. And anytime you're investing or doing a project, how you should be helping local communities, and he was passionate about various causes. And so, spending time with very high quality people, ambitious, changing the world, thinking big, it really rubs off on you.
Absolutely. So it's really the company you keep also, which has a huge influence on you, right? Yeah. So you went through a period during when you were in private equity where you were traveling a lot, you worked really, really hard. Describe the life of a person working in a venture capital firm, and what unique experiences have you had due to that particular industry? Because you're working with industry heavyweights. You're all over the place, all the time, in touch with everyone. Yeah. So tell us about your life in that industry.
Yeah, I mean, in a few years, I visited 65 or 70 countries. I remember once I took off from London and went to California, got off the plane, had a meeting, back on a plane to Beijing, got off the plane, had a meeting, and then back to London. I didn't sleep in any hotel anywhere. It was a round-the-world trip in 2.5 days.
Wow. Just
getting off the airport, having meetings. And it's exhausting. And I'm glad in the last year I've not had to travel anywhere because of COVID. But the huge opportunity I got was building relationships with people in the Far East, in the US, in the Middle East. And those relationships have been really invaluable to me. And so that's a real opportunity when you travel and you get to meet people. And I was very lucky I got to meet some very influential people and became close friends with them.
Right, okay. Now, you also hold a certain number of positions on boards in different companies, hospitals. You also have the Sarfraz lecture at Oxford University. Tell us a bit about those endeavors of yours.
I could never get into Oxford University, so I thought I'd at least have the Pakistan lecture in Oxford University. And I think in January we'll also start an endowment, Lord Sarfraz endowment, for helping students from Pakistan going to Oxford. It's a passion, and then I've been involved with various U.S. Hospitals and universities. Texas A&M, I'm on their international advisory board, but it's sort of education and healthcare. I like to be on those sort of boards. But the one I enjoy tremendously is being on the board of WWF Pakistan, which is a fantastic board, doing incredible work.
Okay, and one of the interests in that is the snow leopard. Is that one of your interests?
I've really been keenly, interested in the snow leopard for a decade or more. I'm on the leadership council of the largest wildcat foundation in the world called Panthera, and I got a chance to spend time in jungles. I've been to the Pantanal in Brazil. 6 or 7 times and for weeks, and spend time looking for jaguars in the jungle. And so I really care about wildlife and conservation. And I was delighted a couple of days ago with the huge, ambitious announcements of the Prime Minister of Pakistan around his green manifesto and reducing carbon footprint. I was very, very exciting.
Right.
Didn't really get enough attention. But internationally, I think it's just huge.
Right. The initiative of the 10 billion tree tsunami is also huge for reforestation in Pakistan. That's Prime Minister Imran Khan's initiative. So he's been extremely environmentally conscious and conscious about climate change. Now let's come now to this part of your journey where you ended up as the treasurer of the UK Conservative Party. How did that end up happening?
Yeah, so I didn't know anyone in the Conservative Party when I got involved, and I was trying to figure out where I fit in the political landscape in the UK. Is it with the Labour, which is where most British Pakistanis end up, or is it the Liberal Democrats? But I was drawn to the Conservatives because their principles of small government and enterprise and supporting entrepreneurs and all of that, it just resonated with me. And I joined the party, and I was welcome. I didn't know anyone there. I didn't come from a family of British politicians or anything.
Yes.
But they welcomed me, and I was appointed treasurer. And then I worked really, really hard. I was appointed treasurer, and I was an advisor on outreach to ethnic minority communities. And I absolutely loved it. Really, really loved it.
Right. And What service did you do as treasurer for the Conservative Party? How did you contribute to the party?
Yeah, so the role of a treasurer is to make sure the party is resourced. So in the UK system, like many systems, parties have to raise their own money. And it's very strict how you raise it, who you raise it from, how it's all declared, etc.
Okay.
And so I had to help resource the party. And then we had a general election. And so during an election, you need more resources. And there are some countries in the world where the government pays for political parties. And that works well too. But in the UK, like in the US is a different scale, right? They raise billions of dollars on political campaigns. But for us, it's much smaller scale. But you have to make sure the party is resourced and the right folks are involved and all of that.
Right. So now becoming a member of the House of Lords, was that a surprise? Is it something that you expected to happen? Or was it just something that you're working towards? How did this come about?
I didn't expect it to happen at all. There are people who work extremely hard in the Conservative Party. There are people who are very, very smart. And I was very surprised and extremely grateful to Prime Minister Johnson for giving me the opportunity. It's out of the blue for me. And I really feel it's a responsibility now. On one hand, it's an honor. It's a great honor to be in the House of Lords for life. It's a wonderful thing. But it's a huge responsibility. You have to deliver now for everyone who expects you to, but also for the Prime Minister who put me there. I'm incredibly loyal to him, and he's given me this break. And I have to deliver for him.
Right, absolutely. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you're a deeply religious and very spiritual person also. Prior to becoming a member of the House of Lords, you went on a trip to Masjid-e-Aqsa. And tell us a little bit about that, because that's an unusual experience, going to Jerusalem, which few Pakistanis get to do because of the nature of the situation with the two countries. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I hope, inshallah, one day that every Muslim is able to go to Masjid-al-Aqsa. Because it's an incredible place to visit and very, very special. Now, to get there, you have to go through either from Jordan or other routes. It's very hard to get there. But I hope everyone is able to go there because it is such a powerful place to visit. And the actual compound has layers of prayer space underground, which is all empty because Muslims aren't able to get there. Otherwise, it will be full. And when I was there, I got a chance to visit Hebron, where Hazrat Ibrahim is buried.
Right.
And there are other prophets who are buried there as well. And that is also an incredible place in Palestine to visit.
Okay.
And inshallah, I hope one day Muslims are able to visit all of these sites because they're some of the most incredible places.
Right.
Jerusalem, what an amazing, amazing place.
Right, and Islamic history especially, and all the three great religions. Now, we'll come to the point where you've been appointed as a member of the House of Lords. You become Baron Aamer Sarfraz, and you had to go and take your oath, and your oath-taking ceremony was done on the Holy Quran. Right.
Yeah, amazing.
Right. After that happened, you had to design a sort of a flag, coat of arms type of a thing, traditionally and all. Describe that for us, because that's a very unusual type of design that you made.
Well, before I got in, one of the reasons I was able to get here today, I reflect a lot on it, was because I rely entirely on the advice of my wife. And I'm very, very lucky to have a wife who provides me with, it's detailed advice. So anytime I'm making a speech or sending a text or doing anything, I ask her advice first. And so you asked about the coat of arms. I talked to her about it, and I decided I would like some Islamic theme in my coat of arms as well. This is issued by the College of Arms in the UK. And so I've asked for an English lion on one side and a snow leopard representing the Himalayas in Pakistan on the other side. And in the middle, I've asked for the dome from Masjid al-Nabi in Medina. And so green dome in the middle. And I'm very excited about that. It takes a year for them to make it.
Right.
So I'm waiting.
Right. And becoming now a member of the House of Lords, your daughters are now the Honorable Miss Sophia and the Honorable Miss Amal. How has their life changed in school and things like that, from being these they're toddlers and they're running around doing naughty things that toddlers do? How has their life been impacted?
Well, their mother will make sure it's not impacted at all. And it makes no difference at all to them. And we'll make sure. I finally got them to say honorable instead of horrible after months of practicing. But no difference at all.
Right. Now, after your formal introduction into the House of Lords, first thing I forgot to ask you, which is very important, when you were given the news that Aamer Sarfraz, you're becoming a member of the House of Lords, what was your first reaction? Were you in total shock, or what did you want to do right away?
I went home and woke up my wife and I told her, and she didn't really believe me. She thought I've lost it completely. but then I, the same day, actually booked a flight and went to Medina. And I prayed. And,
because Makkah was in lockdown.
It was in lockdown already. It was early in the year, and you couldn't get there. So I went to Medina. Any flight I could get, I had to take Egypt Air via Cairo to Medina. And I just went for a day, not even, less than a day, just to pray and to make sure that I'm able to serve in this position properly.
And pay your respects to our great Prophet, peace be upon him. And it was Eid time.
Yeah.
It was such a blessed time of year. It was Eid. This is one of the good news that we had this year in 2020, which everyone says has been an awful year. This is one of the wonderful news that we've had, is that Pakistani, from a Muslim from Pakistan, raised in Islamabad, right here in Pakistan, has become a member of the House of Lords, has been appointed by Her Majesty the Queen. So really it was a blessed time in the middle of all this sad news and all these sad events taking place. Now what I'm going to ask you is that about the issues that are important to you now, that you speak about in Parliament. First of all, your maiden speech in the House of Lords, how did it feel for you to be among all that tradition that takes place and all the peers who have been there for like generations, the generational lords? So how did that feel that first day when you went in there and gave your speech?
Some of them have been cabinet members before I was born, in Thatcher's cabinet and before that as well. And so I was obviously very nervous going in with all these folks. But they make you feel so welcome and such a warm environment. It's not at the House of Commons where everyone is yelling at each other. In fact, when you're sitting on your bench, you look at the opposition. So in the House of Commons, you're looking at an opposition which is usually very angry and hostile towards you. In the House of Lords, I got smiling faces from the other side, encouragement. Everyone is very nice. And so they make it very, very easy. It's very, very welcoming. But the issue is that people there are just so capable. They've had these track records of 40 years, 50 years in their careers, the top of their game. And so you have to be humble and listen more than you speak.
Absolutely.
That's what I do.
Absolutely. And also in your maiden speech, you talked about certain different issues. You talked about your chance to serve growing up in Pakistan, but you also talked a lot about entrepreneurship in the United Kingdom and entrepreneurs having access to a local market, etc. And you're also very interested in technology venture capital, and you also mentioned being a member of the ethnic minority community doing all this work. So tell us a little bit about all these different the goals that you have as an ethnic minority member. What would you like to achieve now going forward?
Well, after Brexit, I think there's huge opportunities in the UK for entrepreneurs to build all types of technologies all over the country. And I just wanted to encourage folks and make sure that there's an environment where they, they're comfortable and confident doing that. As far as ethnic minorities are concerned, I really hope to be able to reach out more to young BAME members, ethnic minority members, and also to British Muslims and British Pakistanis, and give them a sense of hope and optimism, all the things they can do in the UK. And something which is very dear to my heart.
Right, okay. You've also talked a lot about green technologies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Look, our Prime Minister, just like your Prime Minister Imran Khan, Boris Johnson cares deeply and passionately about green everything. And back when he was Mayor of London, you'll remember he launched what we call the Boris bikes back then. And he's cared about it for a very long time. And now he set major ambitions on net zero for carbon emissions for the United Kingdom. And these represent opportunities, So green technology used to be a separate field altogether, that an entrepreneur would go after something green. And there was a whole clean tech boom and bust 15 years ago. But now every industry has to think green. It's not a separate niche investment area. It's for every industry across the board. And I think this is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs in the United Kingdom, but also equally for entrepreneurs here in Pakistan. I would love to see entrepreneurs here developing new systems for waste. Pakistan generates a lot of waste in cities. Why are we working on new tech for processing waste that'll be used all over the world, not just in Pakistan?
You also spoke in Parliament about the global waste trade and your concerns about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't understand and believe in the 21st century why waste is sent from countries in the developed world to developing countries is a terrible thing. And the UK has taken very strict action on plastic waste and other wastes, and making sure that recipients have various standards in place, are not using children in these waste facilities. I mean, it's something which shouldn't exist at all, this global waste trade. People say it's a resource for some countries, but it has to be properly managed and regulated with standards and training, etc. And so it's something I care about, and the British government is doing a lot on.
Right, and another issue that's very close to your heart, which you've written about as well, is the plight of the Rohingya Muslims.
Yeah.
And you've spoken about it in Parliament,
Yeah.
you've written articles about it. So tell us about how you feel about this issue and what would you like to do for the Rohingyas?
Short term, we want to make sure the Rohingyas get access to basic things like the vaccine over the next few months. It's hugely important, and there is an infrastructure in their camps to distribute vaccines that exists. We want to make sure they get access via the Gavi facility for vaccines. But also, these kids need to be in school, and there's a huge issue of putting these kids in Rohingya camps in school. And we want to make sure that, and the UK aid has done a lot, has actually led the world in working in those camps, but there's a lot more to do. There's also been, sadly, during COVID, lots of people have lost their jobs. There's been violence within the community towards more vulnerable members of the community, including women. And so there's a number of things that need to be done. But this is an opportunity because Myanmar has just had an election. And I think it's an opportunity now, after the election, for the Rohingya issue to be revisited properly. And it is something I care a lot about.
Right. And you're now a member of the House of Lords for life. So what do we expect to see from Lord Aamer Sarfraz in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years? What issues are you going to take up that you think are extremely important to do and discuss and debate in Parliament?
I'm trying to get through this year. But going forward, the great thing about this particular chamber is you don't have to worry about an election and about constituents and about short-termism. And so you can think very long-term. And I'd like to focus domestically on issues that I care about. Some of those I discussed: inward investment in the UK, Rohingyas overseas. But long-term, I'm going to find my feet, find my issues. The issue is that people there are so much more experienced than you in anything, in everything, that you have to just focus on a couple of things and deliver real value there. If I start talking about aviation, there's probably a dozen people who have run the world's biggest airlines and been, transport minister, etc. there. And so you got to just focus on a few things and really work on them.
Right, okay. And as far as now being British Pakistani, who's grown up here in Pakistan, what work would you like to do towards bridging the gaps and bringing together the two countries, Britain and Pakistan, and improving the relations between them and building on what we already have?
where the trade potential is probably 10x where it is today. There's 10 times more trade that can be done between the two countries from where we are today. And that's something which is very, very important to me.
So what areas can trade be enhanced in?
Well, across the board and everything. From fintech to industry to energy to everything. I mean, so British companies that are operating in Pakistan have done tremendously well. They've been very, very successful for a long period of time. And we just have to put Pakistan back on the radar of folks in the UK. And also, I think there's no reason why Pakistani entrepreneurs and businessmen shouldn't be buying assets over there. A denim manufacturer in Pakistan should buy a major brand of jeans in the UK. And there's lots of cross-border stuff that can be done. But I'd love to see a dozen Pakistani companies listed on the London Stock Exchange, the main market, not other sort of instruments, but the main market.
And you think that's doable?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only doable, it'll be done, inshallah.
Inshallah. Now, as far as the younger generation is concerned, you're a young member of the House of Lords, and there are a lot of youth who are looking up to you right now in Pakistan, seeing, how did he get there? And they're also thinking that we have goals and we want to get somewhere. What message do you want to give to those young people about achieving their dreams?
मेरे जैसे बंदा अगर इस्लामाबाद में बड़े होके हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स में अपॉइंट हो सकते तो आप कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. You can do anything you want.
Right.
Just think really, really big and work really, really hard.
Right.
And anything is possible in this day and age, right now, where you can find contact details of someone you want to reach in minutes. I used to cold call, cold email people all the time, in business and in politics, all the time. Listen, pick up the phone, call people you want to meet. Talk to them. Nobody can meet you physically right now, today. So use Zoom and Skype and talk to them. It's think big and go for it. And honestly, I grew up like everyone else here, and hopefully people do much bigger things than I could ever do. We've got some of the most talented people in the world. You can bring a machine from Germany that no one's ever seen, and you give it to a Pakistani mechanic who's 16 years old and has never seen it. He'll fix it somehow.
Yes.
He'll just do it. He'll figure it out.
And he'll replicate it also.
He'll replicate it, and he's had no training on it.
Yeah.
Enterprising people.
Yeah. So actually randomly calling up people and emailing them works
Phone, yeah.
for people, and just introducing yourself.
You have to be humble. 10 people you reach out to, 9 might not respond. But that one who responds might be your friend for life. And that's happened with me many times.
Right, and then at the same time, the youth in Pakistan is looking up to you, but there are also the ethnic minorities in the United Kingdom who are looking up to you. We have a lot of members of in the parliament who are of Pakistani Muslim origin, different origins and all. What would you like to see for their future as well?
I think we just need to give them a sense of hope and optimism. What's not fair is when people sit at home and are depressing and talk about all the negativities in life. We don't have the opportunities, the world is against us, Bill Gates is trying to get our DNA from the vaccine. All of this negative stuff is a waste of energy. It's draining folks. I just like to show them all of the success stories. Look, in the UK politics, British Pakistanis and British Muslims in general have been incredibly successful. Cabinet members, people of parties, MPs, lords, mayors, councillors, everything. In sports, we have some great sports stars in cricket and boxing, all British Pakistanis. And so we just want to show them what's possible.
Right, and the cause of this is all these successful Pakistanis, British Pakistanis getting to where they are. What is the driving force? What is the cause that they've actually made it? Whereas others who may be sitting here who are saying that I want to be a member of the House of Lords, or I want to be a star athlete or boxer or whatever, or businessman, how come they're making it big and others are not? What is the difference? What is that success formula? What's the missing ingredient?
I think we're just very capable when given a level playing field. And in the UK, I got a level playing field. And frankly, I think folks here, I mean, the number of women entrepreneurs in Pakistan, from textile designers to school entrepreneurs, the two biggest private schools here are women entrepreneurs who've built massive, successful schools. It's incredible what you can do here as an entrepreneur, and you know, I think we're very capable people. Look, in the NHS in the UK, some of the top doctors and nurses are from this part of the world,
Yes, they are.
from South Asia. And some of the best financial people in the world working in banks and accountants are from this part of the world. If you go to Texas, you know, you go to Houston, you'll see British, American, Pakistani entrepreneurs all over the place, very well regarded.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it's in our DNA. We're a very clever lot, yeah.
Right, and that ingredient is just getting the work done. It's just going after it, the drive.
Yeah, I think so. And in my case, I'll be honest, it was a whole lot of prayer as well. It works. It worked for me.
You prayed a lot to get to where you are.
Absolutely.
And you also had the prayers of a lot of people
Absolutely.
behind you.
Undoubtedly.
Thank you, Lord Aamer. So viewers, I hope you enjoyed our program today. We introduced you to a very, very unique personality, Lord Aamer Sarfraz, one of the youngest ever members of the House of Lords in the UK Parliament, and he became a member of the House of Lords this year by Her Majesty the Queen. And it's a great honor for Pakistan and a great honor for the Muslim community, and it's a great honor for all of us in Islamabad who've seen him grow up, his family, his friends, and everybody. So we've given you an insight into his life. You've got to know him, how he's gotten there, and I hope it's inspired our viewers to see that you can also be anything that you want to be. Just have a dream and work towards it. Thank you so much for watching Sky's the Limit. We'll see you at the same time on the same channel, PTV World, next time on Sunday. Thank you very much.